Katherine Stanislawski with Keller Williams, and I'm here today at South Central Land Title.
And I'm Jeff Smallwood.
And I'm Stacy Hudson.
Okay, so tell us about the title company and what you guys do here.
So pretty much as real estate title company, we sort of are the middleman as far as putting together paperwork and handling funds with real estate closing when folks are buying or selling real estate.
So let's talk about the process of buying a home. When you receive a contract, what do you guys do?
So we're basically, when we're getting that contract in, we're reviewing through, and that's sort of our starting point on our file. So that's what is basically written instruction for how we handle that transaction. That's going to say who the buyer is, who the seller is, who or what the property is, and what terms that they've agreed to. So just think of the title company side of things as we're just the paperwork pusher, really. We're the ones that are going to go through and work on a title search. We're going to reach out to agents on both sides and get information for the transaction, and then try to set up our file the way that the folks have agreed to, however their transaction has been set up at the contract.
Okay. So can you talk about the title insurance and what that is and the purpose?
Absolutely. So the thinking is title insurance as a buyer, the buyer is going to get an owner's title insurance policy. So, and what that is, and that's something that's often folks don't exactly know what that is or how that benefits them. And that is going to be a policy that says that it guarantees that their ownership is good in that piece of property that they're going to buy. So the thinking is as a buyer, you want to make sure you're choosing your home. There's a lot of decisions that go into that, but you want to have that protection to make sure that you're guaranteed that there aren't items that could come up that are adverse to your ownership. So things like that would be, judgments or liens or things like that, or deeds that have been done wrong prior to your ownership or you taking title to that.
Because those liens are attached to the property, not necessarily the previous homeowner. So what are some red flags that you find in the title work?
So a lot of times the things that do come up as issues would be judgments, and a lot of times I think an important note is that the seller sometimes doesn't know about these things, and it isn't something that the seller is necessarily hiding from anyone in the transaction. It's just that they don't quite understand that some of the things that affect them affect their real estate as well. And so those things would be like a judgment. So say that seller, the owner of the property or a previous owner had a credit card that they didn't pay, and they got a judgment, and they might not have even gone to that court case. They might have just been served a notice of a case. That credit card collection company sued them, got a judgment, and the important thing is that a judgment can tie itself to real estate. And so whether that seller knows about it or not, they might, a lot of times when we bring up something, it's that, yeah, I know I owe money to those folks, but that's not tied to my property. But it really is, because there's a very specific set of rules of what type of judgment can attach to a piece of property. And so judgments are definitely probably the most common problem.
And what steps do you do to ensure that a property has clear title? So what's the process look like behind the scenes?
Yeah, that's a good question, because a lot of folks don't, when we either finish our title search or if we come across a problem, a lot of times folks don't quite understand exactly what goes into that. So we're checking in two main areas. So one is in circuit court of the county that the property is located in. So won't bore everybody, but there's different courts. There's associate court and circuit court. And so a judgment in circuit court affects real estate. So we would check buyer names and seller names and any previous owners within the last 10 years. So the thinking would be, as a judgment is typically good for 10 years. And so even if it's not that seller, but our seller's taken title within that 10-year time frame, we're going to check that previous owner as well. And so that's in circuit court. And then we're going to check deed records. So the thinking is we're going to go back through every deed where the seller took title and go back in time to make sure that each time that property has changed hands, that it's been done correctly, and that everyone that was an owner, deeded their interest away. So the thinking is a good example we often use is that when you buy a vehicle, you get a title, and that is simply, it's the piece of paper, and if I own it, I'm going to sign that title, and it's going to be to you. that title might have a lien on it. It might say that you owe money to a bank, but that is all that can affect that vehicle. It's just that title. Whereas with real estate, you could have an issue from 50, 60, 70 years ago where somebody didn't deed away, or somebody, a deed was done wrong, and that still affects that property today. Whether the folks that have an interest in it know or not, it's something that typically the passage of time doesn't fix title work issues. So things like that we sometimes check would be, you're just checking to make sure that every person that owned it deeded away, and that in Missouri their spouse has to deed away as well, and so you're making sure that marital status and spouses are on there, and also the legal description. So every property is going to have a specific legal description that describes it.
If something comes up, what's the process? Who's all involved in helping?
Yep. So the just to kind of piggyback off of that type of example. So say got a scenario where back in, I believe, the 1960s, someone put in a deed that they reserved the mineral rights on that property. And then every deed from then on, no one's, done anything to correct it. And in this case, buyers wanted those mineral rights. They wanted, purchase the land and everything below it. In this scenario, it was something where the thought is then you have to track down that person that reserved those mineral rights, because that person or their estate technically owns those.
Okay.
And that would be a scenario where you then have to try to do some digging and see, is that a name that you can find? Is that somebody that is still around and living? In this scenario I'm thinking of, they had been long deceased, and then the thinking is that mineral rights interest is then owned by the children, and so then you then have to track down those children.
Right.
And if any of them have passed, it would go to grandkids, and so it can become a large number of people. But then the thinking would be is you can have an affidavit of death and heirs recorded that says that, hey, this person reserved the mineral rights. They then went to the kids upon their passing, and then it's a question to try to talk those folks into deeding those mineral rights back to the property owner. And
I think it's HMs, if you suspect that there might be something like that. So it's kind of nice to do some preliminary legwork initially before you even list the property, perhaps, then kind of get that squared away.
We do see sometimes where an agent will do kind of a pre-search. They know they're getting ready to list a property. They're concerned there might be some issues with it, so we will kind of do what we call pre-search for them, see if we find anything.
Right. So what technological advancements or tools do you use to enhance efficiency and accuracy?
So we try to obviously, accuracy is a big thing for everything we do, because it's, one word or one number that's wrong in a legal description, a typical, what's called a meets and bounds legal description is starting at a point, it's going X number of feet this way in a certain bearing, going this way. If you leave out a call, so you leave out a side of the property, then you're not really deeding the property.
Yeah.
And so those things are super important.
Okay, so what should buyers prepare for when they come for closing?
To sign a lot of papers.
Yes.
It's really not too bad. When buyer comes to closing, we're gonna review commitment with them, and then if they've got a lender, chances are, if it's a local lender, maybe the lender will be here with them,
right?
And they'll sign papers with them. If it's not necessarily a local lender, maybe a secondary market loan, we'll have a significant stack of papers.
Yeah.
They range anywhere from 50 to 150 pages for a loan package, and we'll go through those and we'll try to explain them the best we can. So.
Because some of the documents are for the loan. You're handling.
Yeah, we have very few documents that the buyer or seller have to sign, but if there's a loan involved, it definitely is going to take a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. And in most instances, we try, we can get that loan done and through in about 45 minutes or so.
Yeah. And you've been at this location now you're coming up to 3 years.
Yeah. Time flies, but it's it's been working really well for us and everything. But we always just try to stress that it's always something that folks can call us and ask questions. And sometimes on the agent side of things, there's things that if there's a question about an easement, if there's, a process of how should we do this, we're going to split a property. We get a lot of questions like that, or, if there's restrictions on a subdivision, those are things that we deal with all the time. And so we just kind of, those are questions that we don't mind to ask, and we try to pass along as much info for everybody as possible throughout the whole process.
Yeah, you guys are great. You have a great system and great communication, and I know I always love working with you guys.
Appreciate working with you as well. So
thank you.